Australian Aviation Podcast, the official podcast of Australian Aviation, unpacking the latest insights, developments and issues impacting Australia's aviation sector.
Hello and welcome to the Australian Aviation Podcast. I'm Jake Nelson, and with me as per usual is my co-host, the Deputy Editor of Cyber Daily and semi-professional Dolly Parton body double, David Hollingworth.
You've no idea how good I look when I do Dolly Parton.
The rhinestones must be a knockout.
The hair is marvellous, yeah.
Shout out to Dolly Parton, by the way. Dolly, if you're listening...
Happy birthday.
Yeah. A, happy birthday. B, we're flattered. And C, why? Big couple of weeks in aviation. It's starting to pick up again after the post-holiday the post-holiday dip. It does not rain in aviation, but it pours.
Does that stop flights?
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
Right.
Now, we did have a comment come in from Luke Morgan on YouTube who said, hello, Jake, just letting you know that I'm traveling to Honolulu at the end of November on a commercial ticket. Luke, hope you enjoy your trip to Honolulu and also enjoy the incredibly stationary palm trees.
You'll have to report back, see if it's any different from when we were both last there.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to jump into the news for the week. We've had a big week of news. And if you didn't see it, by the way, or if you didn't catch it, we also had a premium podcast that came out on Friday with Damien Lay, the explorer and the filmmaker and author who led the expedition to recover the Lady Southern Cross, or to find the Lady Southern Cross, which was the plane that Charles Kingston Smith was flying.
And was it found?
He believes so.
Yep.
He is pretty certain that what he has found is the Lady Southern Cross. He says that, sonar matches it, and, bits of the plane that they've recovered matches it.
In other words, the blobs look like they might be meaningful blobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It went down in approximately the right area, so that it's in the place where they found it, or where they found it in the place where they suspect the plane would have gone down. According to Damien Lay, everything that they have seen matches up with the hypothesis that this is the Lady Southern Cross.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have not seen that, or if you've not listened to that premium podcast episode, that is available on the Australian Aviation website. Damien Lay has also put out his book, Of Air and Men, which is a dramatization or a fictionalization of both the life of Sir Charles Kingston Smith leading up to that final flight, and also the search by Damien himself for the wreckage. Fascinating interview. I suggest you check it out. Anyway, without further ado, the news. Big news that came out of the ACCC. This was reported in the Oz. A Senate inquiry has basically warned that the current ACCC framework of monitoring and reporting no longer acts as a constraint on behavior by the monopoly airports. And they want stronger regulation. So do Airlines for Australia and New Zealand, who are the peak body for the airlines. Airlines versus airports has been, a stoush that's been going on in Australia for ages and ages, Airlines need airports need airlines, but...
And it's probably worth pointing out, I'm sure most of our listeners and viewers realise this, but those airports are Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane and Perth.
Yeah,
which when you say, it's like, of course they're the monopolies, right?
Yeah, they're the major airports. I mean, most cities in Australia have sort of monopoly airports. The only city in Australia that really has two airports worth talking about is Melbourne, which has Tullamarine and Avalon.
Who uses Avalon?
Jetstar. But Tullamarine and, all of these other airports are effectively geographic monopolies.
Yeah.
So landing at an airport isn't free. And, being at an airport isn't free for the airlines. They have to pay, aeronautical charges and all of that. And the airports are embarking on big capital works projects running into the billions of dollars across them. And so the worry is that this will be passed on to customers in the form of, higher aeronautical charges and thus higher ticket prices. So the ACCC told a Senate inquiry in a submission, quote, there is less of a threat of regulatory action than there was when the regime was first introduced over 2 decades ago. An airport not constrained by competition or regulation could be expected to exercise its market power to earn monopoly profit to the detriment of airport users and the broader economy. A commercial arbitration scheme would help to address concerns with the major airports exercising their market power, which would help reduce airport charges faced by airlines, including those that operate in regional locations. So this has been backed up by Professor Graham Samuel, who is the chair of Airlines for Australia and New Zealand, A for ANZ. He said that airports are planning more than $44 billion in capital investments. Passenger charges are set to rise substantially, which will feed into higher airfares and cargo prices. He said consumers deserve transparency and protection for monopoly airports using their market power. He says that an arbitration scheme would ensure fair and efficient commercial negotiations between monopoly airports and airlines. He said, quote, commercial arbitration frameworks are common in other industries and cover all significant agreements. Arbitration would incentivize airports to negotiate in good faith and prevent excessive charges that harm consumers and the broader economy. And he's pointed to New Zealand as a similar market that recently the High Court kind of slapped down an appeal against a new pricing framework by the Commerce Commission. Now, the Airports Association, of course, has come out against this arbitration proposal. Simon Westway, the CEO, said the existing regulations support strong outcomes for passengers and airlines while encouraging private investment and innovation across the airport network. He said 4 separate Productivity Commission reviews have found the framework to be fit for purpose and found no evidence of systematic misuse of market power by major airports. He said in its most recent comprehensive inquiry, the Productivity Commission found no clear evidence that airport arbitrate models deliver better outcomes and warned they could even leave passengers worse off than the current approach. So it's going to be, I think, a thorny issue in Australia until and unless we get more airports in the major cities. I mean, WSI, we talk a lot about WSI, but it's probably going to take a bit of pressure off of Sydney. And, give those airlines another option for where to go if they don't like the fees and charges at Kingsford Smith.
It's a really interesting problem when you pay attention to it. AAA going, we don't see a problem. Well, you would say that.
Yes.
But also,
but by the same token, the airlines, so the airlines going, we do see a problem. You would say that.
You would say that. And all because, I think of myself as a relatively frequent flyer, and I'll go to an airport and I figure, I'm glad they're doing that up. I hope that bar gets better. I hope something. And you always like to see the airport you spend a lot of time in getting improved. But then to realize that those improvements result in fees that go to the airline that go to me.
Yeah.
It's like, that seems... These guys are making how much money a year?
Yeah.
And they're going, we can't afford that new bar at Sydney Airport. Hollingworth, you got to pay more for your beer.
Well, see, it's not just about new bars. There's third runways. Like Melbourne Airport's putting in a new runway, which it needs to increase its capacity. Sydney Airport's redoing the T2 terminal, which is about time. I think they've actually opened those new security screening lanes.
I think so, yeah.
And new security screening at Brisbane Airport. Melbourne Airport's got redevelopments going on. Perth is doing this big one airport project to bring everything sort of into the airport central district and redo the terminals and that. So, redoing old tired terminals.
Yeah.
T2 was the Ansett terminal. So it's been around for
You're not wrong. Yeah.
T2 at Sydney was the Ansett terminal. So it's been around for ages. This infrastructure needs renewing. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, but where does the cost fall ultimately?
And by the same token, is the cost of redoing the airport eventually going to be outweighed by the cost of the tired old infrastructure needing more and more upkeep and maintenance?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And is it going to cost more to have an airport be more and more constrained by having fewer runways?
Yeah. But even then you get to the point where suddenly, 12 months from now, Western Sydney Airport will be open. We might expect to see some... Less than, yeah. Well, also, we'll definitely be open 12 months from now. We may expect to see competition between those airports.
Yes.
Who can present the best airport for both the airlines and the traveller. So, do you think that might help alleviate this kind of problem, in Sydney at least?
Quite possibly. Like I say, it's when there's more competitors in a market,
Yeah.
the prices come down, generally speaking, and hopefully it would translate to airfares as well.
Yeah.
Because if you've got more options as to where to fly, maybe it's cheaper to fly into Western Sydney than it is to fly into Kingston Smith. Maybe Jetstar charges less. Do they if you're flying to Avalon with Jetstar, I think they charge less than Tullamarine, right?
But then you end up in Avalon.
Yeah,
Sorry, Avalon.
But the airfare would be lower,
cheaper.
I believe.
Yeah.
Whereas if you fly to Tullamarine, you're closer to the city, but it would be more expensive
For values of closer to the city.
values of closer to the city. Now, Western Sydney, again, it'll be a very nice new airport. And will prices be lower out at Western Sydney? I don't know. Will they? But you'd have to think that more competition into a city would sort of bring those prices down.
You'd like to think that.
You'd like to, you'd hope to.
Yeah, like being heavily italicized there.
Yes.
Yeah.
On the subject of WSI, we had a story come out today from the New South Wales government basically admitting that new metro line is not going to be open when the airport opens.
I hope air travel is like bus travel because that's what they are going to get.
Yes. So the good news is the buses will be free. So starting when the airport opens, there will be a free interim bus service between WSI and St Mary's Transport Interchange. So the buses will go every 30 minutes, 4:30 a.m. to midnight Sunday to Thursday, 4:30 a.m. to 1 a.m. Friday and Saturday. The trip is expected to take 30 minutes in normal traffic, whatever that is.
For Sydney, who knows?
Especially for Western Sydney. Now, track laying is now 70% complete on the metro line. That started last April. Station construction has reached key milestones, apparently, whatever those are.
They're operating full speed trains on them at the moment.
Are you sure, or is that the Southwest Metro?
It's the Southwest Metro because that's the one I care about. That's right.
Yeah,
yes.
no, they would not be operating. They would not be operating full speed trains on the Western Sydney Airport Metro because that is not finished yet.
Well, I mean, not with that attitude.
Yeah, it's maybe fit some rubber tires on the train so that when the tracks end, you just sort of keep driving over the cow.
You see, now there's the solution we need for this problem. Yeah.
Yeah. But then you've just got a giant bus anyway. So station construction on Western Sydney Airport Metro has reached key milestones. The M12 motorway is going to be open in coming months ahead of the airport. So that's going to connect the airport to the rest of the Sydney motorway network. Now, these free buses that will be running in place of the metro are going to connect the airport. So they're going to complement other permanent bus services. So there will be local buses connecting the airport to Penrith, Leppington, Liverpool, Campbelltown, and Mount Druitt. Those will go from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week, 30-minute schedules beginning before the opening of WSI. Transport Minister John Graham said, quote, free interim buses will give passengers and airline operators the certainty that an onwards journey on public transport is in place alongside the new M2 motorway for road access, taxis and rideshare as we complete the equally transformational metro line between the airport and St Mary's. The free interim buses will phase out when the metro opens, but the new bus services between the airport and Penrith, Oran Park, Campbelltown, Liverpool, Mount Druitt and Leppington will be a permanent upgrade for public transport. Now, this is not a huge surprise that the metro will not be ready. It's been rumored for a while, and last year we spoke to Simon Hickey, the CEO of WSI, who basically said we are making plans in case the metro is not open by the time we are open.
Can I also point out that Mr. Hickey is quite the wordsmith?
Yes.
Critical transport investments can truly connect the West to the West and the West to the rest for the first time and deliver transformational economic opportunities that will benefit all of Sydney. I had to read that 3 or 4 times to work out whether he'd made an error, whether you'd transcribed it incorrectly, or whether I was just not reading it properly. Connect the West to the West and the West to the rest.
Say that 10 times quickly.
Feels like I'm having a stroke whenever I say that.
So no metro at the opening of Western Sydney Airport, but the metro will be finished soon after, one hopes, and there will be free interim bus services. And Western Sydney Airport is still going to get a train faster than Melbourne Airport, despite the fact that Melbourne Airport has been around for however many decades now.
For quite some time.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, look, it's going to be free. That's okay. often when I look at these news developments, I think, well, how will it affect me? It probably won't. I very much doubt I'll be using Western Sydney International all that much. But at the same time, this is a major infrastructure project that has been coming down the track or down the runway for how long now?
Quite a while.
Yeah, and you'd think you'd be able to get all the moving parts together at the same time, but metros are difficult, apparently.
I mean, that's, public infrastructure for you.
Yeah.
It's great when you get it together, but it's the getting it together that's the tricky
the hard part. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, you've got to wonder, like, if
you've ever seen
you're
Utopia.
a Western Sydney resident and you've been waiting for the airport this long, you're going to get it full on one side. It's the airport that matters. I'll handle the free bus. Or it's like, oh God, we still have to wait to get the complete experience. So, do we have an estimated time of arrival for the airport metro?
Not certain at this point. It probably won't be like a year, especially because they've already laid down 70% of the track.
Yeah.
It's they got to finish off the tracks, they got to finish off the stations, and then they got to do all the testing. Probably. I wouldn't say, too late into 2027, one hopes.
But probably late 2027, hopefully not too late. I was going to say the back half of 2027 sounds sensible.
Maybe the front half.
Well, look, I'm still experiencing the whole delays on my line, so yeah.
We will have to wait and see, essentially.
Yeah.
But it's, we now basically have an admission that this metro line is not going to be open when the airport is, which is a shame.
It is. It really is. It'd be lovely to just have everything working at the get-go. Airport open, everything going. But I can't imagine there are too many projects like this around the world that manage to get everything right on that open day.
And, the airport itself seems to be running bang on time.
Tickety-boo, as they say. Yeah.
Everything with the airport itself has been a long time coming, but once they started building the thing, it's going to be open and ready when they said it would at this stage.
Yeah.
And that's not nothing.
It is not nothing, absolutely.
And, if you saw in the latest issue of the Australian Aviation magazine, this was back in August that we went there, so undoubtedly there's been a whole lot of progress since then.
More bars, I imagine.
And any bars at all. The airport, as we did a tour of the terminal, and it's basically ready, right? They got to put all the shops and retail and stuff in there, but you've got screens showing like mock-up departure and arrival schedules. You can walk through the airport and everything.
You can kind of squint and imagine what it's going to look like when it goes live.
Yeah, exactly. And it's mostly into the testing and retesting and all of that, and the finalization of everything. So the airport itself will be open on time, unless something goes drastically wrong.
Just got to get a bus to get there.
Yes, exactly. Which, not the end of the world.
It's not the end of the world.
We are going to take our first break, but when we come back, we'll be back with more of the week's news. Back in a second. All right, welcome back. You're listening to the Australian Aviation Podcast. We talked a bit about the break. We did. But we talked
technically, yes, we did. Yeah.
We did. We talked a bit before the break about monopoly airports and WSI, public transport. But it's been a banner year for the airlines and for the airports in 2025. Over the holiday peak, the busiest holiday peak for air travel in 5 years.
I mean, when you think about that number, it kind of makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah, there was a few things that happened in that 5-year period.
Yes, that is true. But we had overall passenger numbers up 4.5% year on year in December 2025. That's according to the Air Services Australian Aviation Network Overview Report. And that was driven by holiday travel as well as major events like the Ashes, Lady Gaga, ACCC.
Lady Gaga is for air travel. I like that.
Yeah. On the 18th of December... the network recorded 2,872 daily passenger flights, 100 more flights than the busiest day in December 24. International connectivity has expanded. The Australian aviation sector says Air Services is experiencing resilient growth, supported by low unemployment, sustained private consumption, and moderating inflation despite mixed global economic conditions. However, capacity and supply chain constraints and geopolitical uncertainty remain key risks. Wonder what kind of geopolitical uncertainty we're talking about here.
I mean, take your pick, but that's something for the Defence Connect podcast.
Yes. So we've got strong East Coast corridors now complemented by expanded point-to-point services, particularly direct capital to regional routes. We've got east-west links, coastal tourism gateways, strong ramp-up in capacity and demand from the Asia-Pacific and Middle East. And industry on-time performance was stable for the month at around 70%.
That's pretty good.
It's pretty good. So well done there. And, it's been some good years for the airports individually. I mean, I think Perth has had a record year.
It feels
Brisbane's had a record
exactly
year.
Like every other podcast, we're talking about another airport having a record year of throughput. We're talking, aviation's back, baby.
Yeah, exactly. And what else was there? Monthly passenger records for Brisbane Airport. For Melbourne Airport. It's and again, in the depths of COVID, as Adam used to say when he was around, sometimes I still hear his voice in my nightmares. But when Adam was around, he used to say that during the dark days of the height of COVID with the lockdowns and everything, people were wondering whether the Australian aviation sector or the global aviation sector would ever get back on its feet or ever get back to pre-pandemic levels. But there has just been such a revival over the past few years.
It's a weird thing to look back at that period where people thought, well, that's it for air travel.
Yeah.
Looking back, I can't imagine ever thinking that. But also back then, I wasn't working in a job where I was week in, week out looking at the industry. And it just seems oddly naive to think that an industry which has become so essential to the way the world operates, which is so taken for granted, that a blip, and let's be honest, in terms of history, COVID is a blip, that 2-year period might kill the industry.
Yeah.
One, just imagine every major airline airport across the world after a 2-year blip going, well, we tried hard. I guess, I don't know, tear up the concrete, plow it into fields.
But of course, back then we didn't know how long this was going to last.
True, but
it's easy to look back from the halcyon year here of 2026, the glory days of the mid 2020s, looking back at the early years and saying, oh well, obviously it was going to bounce back. But in 2020, 2021, when everything was being locked down and there was no sign of vaccines yet, and it was sort of rolling closures of borders everywhere, and all of the fleets around the world were grounded. It was like, wow, this is apocalyptic. And it was worse for the industry than 9/11, and 9/11 was bad. I mean, 9/11 was the final straw that kind of knocked Ansett over.
Yeah, just too much. Yeah. I don't know, it's weird. I always knew that COVID would end and I would travel again. And that's purely as a traveler looking how I felt back then. I knew where I'd go, I knew what the trip would be, and I knew that the minute that was available, I would do it. And I did. So maybe I was just being really hopeful.
I'm just imagining you sitting there going, when all this is over, I'm going to travel again. You'll see. I know exactly where I'm going to go.
You're not incorrect.
Just like,
maybe about the accent you are.
Looking out the window while the music swells.
Actually, no, I had my foot up on a small dune while Twin Suns set and the Skywalker theme played over it. And I was thinking of getting off the planet once more. Yeah.
And then the cough medicine wore off.
That's exactly right. Actually, I finished watching Tiger King and got sober. Just a glimpse into my lockdown experience right there.
But yeah, so it's been a really solid possibly, and as we've sort of talked about a few times, the sectors that are sort of lagging would be business travel kind of still.
Well, business travel is a bit fraught because you can't go to the places you would normally travel to quite so easily. Next month, I'm traveling to Canada on a work trip.
Ah, yes.
And to do that...
Where are you going in Canada?
Montreal.
Which is still technically part of Canada. No matter what.
What? They're seceding? Is there something that I don't know about?
I mean, it's Quebec. They may have seceded by next week.
Yeah, good point. But to get there, I have 2 stops in the US.
Uh-huh.
And I filled in my ESTA today.
Uh-huh.
And they needed to know all of my social media. I've told them the social media they need to know about. If they want my OnlyFans, they can pry it out I've said too much.
But
nonetheless,
if anyone from the US Transport Safety Administration is listening,
Don't.
He's given you all of the social media, every social media account that he has.
Just imagining this Gestapo-dressed guy at border immigration going, we heard your podcast here, Hollingworth. Also, I don't have a German accent. Don't do that again. But that kind of business travel is just more fraught. There are entire sectors of the globe now where the airspace is prohibited. Getting into the US is like just an exercise in, I don't know, what are you willing to give up to the regime? Business travel just seems
Brian.
weird. At the same time as what once could have been a face-to-face meeting of the board somewhere in New York City can now literally just be a Zoom call.
And that's it. Zoom has sort of and Teams, I guess, has sort of redefined how we're having business meetings now. But also, I think the UK is sort of bringing in new things for dual citizens that might need navigating. I'm not sure what the deal is with that.
But in terms of like tourism, it just seems like no, people want to get out there and see the world probably before it blows up or something. Or burns,
reasonably safe assumption, unfortunately. But yeah, strong recovery in the Australian aviation sector.
No, it's marvellous. Really, really marvellous.
Really, really wonderful. Less good news for the Australian aviation sector. We had some significant disruptions the other week because of a staff shortage at air services in Sydney. So there were, at least a dozen flights cancelled, others delayed by, up to more than an hour. The other week, there was ground delays by air services at other airports to try and slow the arrivals and departures in Sydney. Now, this was, according to air services, because a number of local staff were on short notice sick and carers leave. Some of those had been covered through resilience measures. Air services spokesman said, Air services is continuing to recruit to ensure that we have additional staff available. As an on-call capability to cover these kinds of short notice absences, we plan to have this resilience level more broadly available through the course of 2026. Now, Stephen Beckett, who is the chief executive of A4ANZ, who we heard from earlier, has basically said, this is enormously frustrating. He was affected by these flights. He said, we're seeing delays right across the network because air services can't staff the tower. This is playing havoc with people's plans for holidays to go to events, weddings, funerals, but also corporate and business travelers. He said, we've got an aviation white paper that is solely focused on improving the services of airlines and the aviation industry for Australian consumers. We ask that Air Services Australia step up and find a solution to what is now an ongoing problem. Now, in fairness to Air Services, they have been busting their backsides to get more backsides into the seats in the towers and the control rooms.
I was wondering where you're going with that one, but you stuck the landing, as they say.
Yes. So Air Services spokesperson said that they are focused on active recruitment, training, and cross-skilling to improve service outcomes. 91 additional air traffic controllers were endorsed over the last 12 months, which is more than 85, which was the target. Air traffic service variation hours in December were 74% lower than last year. And Air Services air traffic flow management attribution to total network delays remained low at 0.2%. They said, despite our heightened focus on holiday resilience, unplanned absences resulted in some ad hoc flow restrictions and service variations around Perth, Brisbane, and Sydney. Staffing is back at where it was before COVID. But
travel's bouncing back stronger, so there are more people wanting to fly with less people able to get that done.
Yes.
What is holding them back from getting the workforce numbers they need?
Look, it's not for lack of trying.
Yeah.
The thing is, air traffic control is not a job that everyone can do. It requires a certain set of skills, as Liam Neeson might say. Not that set of skills, a different one. But potentially you could use that set of skills to really lay down the law if a plane is.
You're going to become an air traffic controller.
Yeah.
I know where you live.
But it requires, to be skilled in certain areas. It requires you to have certain mindsets. And there's also a lot of training that you need to go through to become an air traffic controller.
And given the time that aircraft start flying in and start flying out, I imagine there's a lot of shift work involved.
Yeah.
It's probably just one of those things where,
this is why America is having such trouble with air traffic controllers, and we've mentioned this before. Going back to Ronald Reagan when he sacked all the air traffic controllers, it took age. I don't know, if it took so long to get air traffic controllers back after Reagan sacked all of them.
Well, one of the problems there is you're getting a generational gap in skills knowledge.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And over in America, it's like if you if under these certain circumstances, you are. Or under the circumstances that if you strike, like if you go on a public sector strike and you get fired from it, you never work in public sector again, I think.
Which seems just, very American.
Yeah. So air traffic control is we are doing better in terms of air traffic controllers, I think, than they are doing over in Europe and America. It's just, all over the world, you can't just grab random Johnny off the street and stick him up in the tower and say, God bless you, right? You have to train your air traffic controllers so that they know how to control air traffic. Otherwise, they'll just be random Johnnies off the street.
In front of some very expensive equipment, watching a lot of planes fall out of the sky.
Yeah. So, it's all well and good to say air services needs to increase staffing numbers. They do, but it's not quite as simple as putting out an ad on Seek.
Yeah. Just doing a going to local schools and recruiting straight out of TAFEs, that kind of thing. No.
I mean, going to local schools and recruiting out of TAFEs isn't a bad idea.
However, it's not going to solve it overnight.
Yes, exactly. So it's not just a question of how many air traffic controllers can you get. It's how many air traffic controllers can you get now. And I think that's why Air Services is also looking to recruit from overseas to get experienced air traffic controllers now.
Causing more problems the next time you travel overseas and there are less air traffic controllers when you land there.
Yeah. It's a
vicious cycle.
There is a finite number of air traffic controllers in the world, unfortunately. So we... sort of one more story that we haven't really covered here before the next break. This is from the AFR. They were quoting from an interview.
This is about our old friend?
It's about our old friend, AJ, but also about our other friend, Jane Hrdlicka, who was the CEO of Virgin before she stepped aside last year after a pretty long goodbye. But she spoke to another of our old friends, Joe Aston, whose book, The Chairman's Lounge, we have on the shelf over there, as part of a podcast. By the way, Jane, if you want to come on the Australian Aviation Podcast, we would love to have you if you're doing podcasts. But she basically said that, as the headline says, Joyce lost his way as Qantas CEO, but was extraordinary. So she said that Alan Joyce, because she was at Jetstar, for a while before she went over to Virgin. And so she would have been working under Alan Joyce. She was the CEO of Jetstar. And she said that he was, quote, one of the most extraordinary CEOs I've had the privilege of working with, bar none. He went from strength to strength as a leader. The thing that made him so uniquely capable was his listening capability. He invited debate and discussion. He encouraged people to thrash things around, and we made exceptional decisions as a consequence of that. But she then went on to say, I don't think he was the same CEO at the end as he was at the start. Encouraging active debate and discussion was a hallmark of his leadership and the thing I most respected, and people have to feel confident and safe to be able to do that effectively. I'd like to think they might have made different decisions if everybody felt really comfortable. So it's interesting to get such a frank discussion of Alan Joyce's character from not only a former subordinate but later a former rival.
Yeah, and I guess she's out. Joyce is out at the moment. Neither of them have real, they're not like they're in the industry. I mean, they're obviously in the industry, but it's like, well, you're out of your job. I'm out of my job. Let's just talk about it.
Yeah. So it's. I mean, they talked as well about the article mentions this. the stoush over Qatar Airways, which ultimately led to Qatar taking a stake in Virgin. But it was Alan Joyce who sort of led the lobbying or led the push under him by Qantas to persuade the government successfully out of letting Qatar put on more flights into Australia, expanding Qatar's allowance under the air services agreements. And so Qatar then, took that big stake in Virgin and is wet leasing its aircraft to Virgin now. And so if Alan Joyce had sort of eased off, it's possible that there may not have been that big stake by Qatar Airways in Virgin. Very likely, one would assume.
Yeah.
So that's over on the Rampart podcast.
And I will say, if we do want to get Herdlicker in for a podcast, I'm just looking at the background that she's in here with that Rampart interview. They've got a really good bar and an excellent booze selection. So I think we know what might be the draw here for really good guests.
Joe Aston.
Next story.
Well, we'll actually go for another quick break, but when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the rest of the week's news. We'll be back in a moment. All right, welcome back. You're listening to the Australian Aviation Podcast. A few quick stories sort of towards the end here. This is not really an Australian story, but it's an interesting one nonetheless. We've got, as you know, there are, as you know, your father, the king, as you know, there are two big plane makers in the world at the moment. You've got Airbus and you've got Boeing. But Embraer is sort of the third biggest, and they focus on regional jets. But over in China, they have COMAC, which is the Commercial Aviation Corporation of China, I believe is what it sort of stands for. And COMAC has been looking to take on Boeing and Airbus in actual narrow-body and wide-body jets. So they have up and running. They have a small regional jet, the C909, which is flying sort of mostly around Asia. If you look at it, it is very, very similar to things like the ERJs and the CRJs that you might have seen. I think they might
909 or 919?
So the 909 is the small one that's currently in service in Asia.
Cool. And the 919 is what they're looking to.
So the 919 is their answer to the Airbus A320neo and the Boeing 737 MAX. It's like a roughly a 190-seat aircraft, thus the 19 part. Currently, it's flying only domestically within China. It has flown once or twice to Hong Kong.
It's interesting, only domestic in China.
Yeah.
Makes it, it's just small. No, it's China's huge.
Yes. So it's flying with Air China, China Eastern, China Southern. It's flown more than 4 million passengers already. What China wants and what COMAC wants, obviously, is to be able to sell this thing outside of China. But to do that, it needs certification. It needs, EASA, the European Union Air Safety Agency, and or the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration over in the United States, to say, yes, this thing is good and safe to fly.
Yeah.
Now, the chances of getting FAA approval anytime soon, roughly equivalent to those of a Welk and a supernova.
Yep.
But the European Union has proven a bit more receptive. And so they have been very recently sending over test pilots to Shanghai to do these verification flights. So basically, the verification flights, they're part of the compliance demonstration. They want to see how the plane does in stalls, poor weather, extreme maneuvers, outside of normal conditions. And now, according to the South China Morning Post, these European authorities are saying that, this plane seems good and safe. There are some teething problems that require tweaks, but they will need to get some kind of thumbs up from EASA to sell this thing globally. Airlines and airline leasing and plane leasing companies outside of China are basically saying, we're not going to sell this thing, or we're not going to buy this thing, rather, if it is not certified by a major regulator outside of China, which, fair enough.
Yeah.
And there have been no Australian airlines who've expressed interest in it yet. Virgin's going with Boeing and Qantas mainly going with Airbus. But
I find it very, very interesting, the idea that a Chinese passenger craft like this could be considered for use in Europe, elsewhere, and abroad. Putting on my cyber hat just briefly, Australia and other countries around the world have been going through phases of we will not allow Chinese technology in our critical buildings, infrastructure, what have you. Huawei cameras and phones, for instance, banned here.
DJI over in America.
DeepSeek, the Chinese AI, verboten. Just recently, the UK has found what they believe is a kill switch in a Chinese bus brand, which is used here in Australia. And I don't like the idea of a Chinese kill switch being in an aircraft I'm flying somewhere, anywhere around the world. And I just wonder, would any airline, international airline, these are very risk-averse organizations, might go, look, buses, cars, security cameras, yeah, they might do that, but we'll trust their aircraft?
Well,
and I'm not trying to be xenophobic here. It's just that this is, we kind of know this is a fact. As somebody who reports on cybersecurity, we consider China to be an opponent when it comes to that kind of grey zone warfare.
Counterpoint,
please.
Ryanair.
Well, yeah, okay.
Well, Ryanair, the CEO Michael O'Leary last year.
That's a counterpoint to so many different things as well.
Ryanair CEO Michael O'Leary basically said, if the plane was, this is a direct quote, according to Simple Flying and according to a travel industry news site, Skift. This was last year. He said the Chinese are basically building an effing A320. So if it was cheap enough, 10 or 20% cheaper than an Airbus aircraft, then we'd order it.
Kill switch or no, damn it.
Well, would China be silly enough to put a kill switch in a commercial passenger plane and risk causing a gigantic aviation disaster / international incident?
I honestly don't know. I really can't answer that. We've seen so many shoot downs of commercial aircraft.
But not from China.
Not from China. Well, clearly, just waiting to join the club.
Yeah.
Possibly my work covering cyber and defense stuff has made me a little bit paranoid. And this is also the kind of high volume industry where it just could be well worth China's thing to go, nope, we are straight up with this. We are not trying to put any kind of kill switch, information gathering device or anything. The plane does what it says in the tin and all you get is the plane.
Yeah. Of course, some of the controversies around the C919 and I think possibly also the wide body, which they're working on the C929, some of the controversies there is basically the notion that they've sort of ripped off designs and, commercial elements from people like Boeing and Airbus.
How very dare a Chinese company do what Boeing and Airbus have been doing to each other all these decades?
Yeah. But
that doesn't worry me nearly as much.
Yeah, it's sort of as we're discussing this though, it kind of occurs to me: could the C919 find an audience in, say, Russia? Because I don't think Boeing and Airbus are too keen to sell to Russia at the moment.
That's a really interesting one.
Yeah, but
yeah. And, the Russian air industry is basically busy trying to punch out bombers and fighter craft that the Ukrainians are destroying en masse.
Yeah,
so
I don't know how many Russian-made aircraft are operating commercially in Russia at the moment. I think Russia's been trying to make its own sort of knockoffs, but the C919 and another question is how quickly can they ramp up production?
Could also
of this thing?
be sold into the South American market where China has a lot of influence. Probably not Venezuela at the moment.
Around Southeast Asia, because you've already got countries like Laos and others that are using the C909, which is their little regional thing. So there could be an audience for it, and the head of EASA, Florian Guillemets.
It's a great name.
Last year, I hope I'm Guillemets.
Guillemot. There's going to be a noise. We need to get Emily on. Emily is our resident
Florian
French person.
Florian Guillermet.
God, Emily just got really angry for no readily apparent reason.
Basically, last year he said that the C919 would probably not be certified before 2028. It would take 3 to 6 years. That was him speaking last year. He did, however, tell French magazine L'Usine Nouvelle, which I hope I said correctly.
It felt French.
Comac is putting a lot of resources, determination, and technical means into the certification. I have no doubt the company will succeed. So yeah, the C919. If you go into aviation YouTube as well, there's people who've flown in it. It's very comparable to a 737 or an A320neo.
I imagine it would be.
I think the engines are not as efficient. So like they're using the LEAP engines, and like some of them are made for Boeing and some of them are made for Airbus. They're using engines that are made for Comac, and they're not as good as the engines you'll find on the Airbuses or the Boeings. But Comac, something to watch. And there is also again the question, we've mentioned this, and some might ask, could Embraer also be looking into or potentially start looking into making a narrow body of its own? Because the Airbus and Boeing backlogs are pretty long. I mean, the Airbus backlog is the highest ever at the moment, and Boeing has only just seen some loosening on restrictions on how many 737 Maxes that it can make. So it's any entry by Embraer would be a ways off. But Comac, the other question is how quickly can it ramp up production? Because it has to still get parts from overseas. It has to make it. It's not making the planes very quickly at the moment, I think. So a lot depending on a lot of things, but Comac could be a company to watch.
I just want to interrupt there just a moment. You mentioned aviation YouTube.
Yes.
Any aviation folks out there who are interested in aviation history, I watched a fantastic YouTube last night on the history of the Boeing 314 Clipper, the last of the great seaplanes. And it is marvelous. It's on the history of why seaplanes were a thing, why they're a very different thing in World War II, and why they died at the end of World War II. But just seeing these majestic giants of the air just made me think, oh man, that's the golden age of travel. And I had no idea that Sydney's first international airport was at Rose Bay on the water.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So just like fantastic piece of history. You mentioned aviation YouTube, and that's on Mega Projects, Boeing 314 Clipper. Have a look at it. It is well worth a watch. You will feel like you've missed out in the golden age of air travel.
Well, shout out there.
Yeah.
Go check that out. We've got a couple more quick stories. Virgin Australia, the trial of pets in cabins is being extended. They have apparently been barking up the right tree. So it was originally slated to finish at the end of this month, this trial, but it's going to be extended to the 30th of June. The airline says it has seen strong bookings, positive feedback from customers and staff. More than 300 pets flew in the cabin on Virgin flights over Christmas and New Year alone. And, I think you can have like a maximum of 4 pets on any flight. So that's pretty impressive. Libby Minogue, the Chief Marketing and Customer Operations Officer, says, we've not only received strong positive feedback from pet owners, but also guests traveling without pets. As we continue to build on the success of pets in cabin flights over the coming months, we look forward to expanding the service to other eligible Virgin Australian domestic flights soon. So cats are also going to be allowed on all the pets in cabin flights starting on the 31st. They've previously been restricted to Melbourne Sunshine Coast. Pets, they need to be small dogs or cats in approved carriers, extra charge of $149. I think they're going to be allowing these tickets to be booked with Velocity points as well.
And must be students in
18A, 18F, 20A, and 20F.
Yeah.
So
soft slide and leak proof. Okay, I really like that last bit.
And you cannot let your pet out during the flight. So you may be seeing more pets on Virgin flights very, very soon.
It's a fun little story, right? And we do this on the Cyber Podcast as well. Try and find those, there's a positive thing to walk away from. But this is, I don't know, there's something that I find I really like this story. I'm sure it'd feel differently if I was in the cabin with a yapping dog.
Yeah.
Or the smell of cat pee. But the idea of traveling with my pet, even though I never want to travel with my pet, for some reason is appealing. I can't tell you why. It's just a nice thing.
It is. I think, again, the real test is sort of safety concerns.
Absolutely.
Because you are constantly told, and we've mentioned this before.
Exactly.
You're constantly told, leave everything behind.
Yeah. But Fluffy isn't my baggage. It's a family member.
Exactly. So what will that do to safety is something that has yet to be tested and hopefully won't be.
Yep.
Some sad news from the RAF. 8 heritage aircraft from 100 Squadron are going to be retired. Now, these include a Vampire, a Meteor, a Cessna Dragonfly, a Ryan STMS-2, English Electric Canberra, CA-27 Sabre, a CT-4A, and an RE-8. They will be transitioned with dignity out of service. The Air Squadron will continue flying 11 other aircraft. So 5 of these are going back to the Temora Aviation Museum. The other 3 are going to be considered for static displays at other approved sites.
So they're not going anywhere. They're just not flying anymore.
Yeah, but it is a shame that you won't be able to really see these aircraft flying anymore.
They're just, God, the RE-8 image in this article you've got here is just, I want to say majestic, but it's not. It's like we still haven't quite worked out how aircraft work.
Yeah.
Aerodynamics, that's a word we'll invent in 10 years. Passenger comfort, no.
In fairness, it is a warplane.
And a World War, actually, I'm going to say that's, so when was the RE-8 from? That's got to be intra-war years. That's got to be between World War I and World War II.
Possibly.
You know what? I'm doing it. I'm looking it up.
Google.
No, I am Googling something in the middle of the pod, which I always hate when people do, and now I'm doing it myself. I've become my own enemy. It is a reconnaissance and bomber aircraft of the First World War. There you go. Oh, I was wrong.
These 8 warbirds are going to be retired and
first flight 1916, retired 1918.
Yeah.
A solid 2 years of service. We salute you.
Yes, but the service with the Heritage Squadron, with 100 Squadron, is coming to an end as well. And lastly, they're bringing back the Vivid Sydney Drone Show. Yeah, so that got cancelled last year due to sort of a crowd crush scenario. But it looks like they're bringing it back. There was a request for tender that was sort of released at the end of last year, I think. It's sort of been getting attention now. And it's going to be, I think, up to 1,000 drones, and it will be moved to Darling Harbour instead of Circular Quay.
I know we're talking like big formation shows, that kind of stuff, like
that sort of thing.
Going and destroying Hobbiton.
It's possibly not Smog destroying Hobbiton, but other other similar events. The drone show
would all fall into the water again.
That was Melbourne.
I know, but nonetheless, you'd have to be worried.
Yeah, but that was Melbourne. We do it much better up here.
Sorry, Melbourne listeners.
On that note, that is about all the time we have for the Australian Aviation Podcast for this week. We will be back next time, same aviation time, same aviation channel. In the meantime, that is it from me, Jake Nelson.
And that's me, done also. Smooth Hollingworth, smooth,
and that's done from Smooth Hollingworth as well. We will be back next week, but for now, from us, goodbye.
Goodbye.